For years, Fazbear Entertainment has been connected to some of the strangest and darkest events in the history of Five Nights at Freddy's. Missing children, murders, haunted animatronics. But eventually, the company came up with a solution to its biggest problem, its own history. They created a virtual reality game called the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, supposedly based on the fictional stories and rumors surrounding the company. But why? Why would Fazbear Entertainment willingly recreate the very events that destroyed its reputation? Well, maybe the answer is that they weren't trying to reveal the truth. Maybe they were trying to control it. Because by turning these horrifying events into a video game, Fazbear Entertainment could make people believe they were nothing more than fictional stories. But there was one problem. Something came with the game. Something that wasn't supposed to be. Hello everyone and welcome to one more video. And today I'm here to talk about why Fazbear Entertainment created the Freddy Fazbear's Virtual Experience. What they were really trying to accomplish. How everything went horribly wrong. And by the end, who are we actually playing as in the game? So if you're ready, let's go to the video. Before we can understand why Fazbear Entertainment created the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, we need to understand the situation the company was in. For years, Fazbear Entertainment had been surrounded by disturbing stories about children disappearing, murders connected to its restaurants, animatronics that were supposedly haunted, and of course, the many strange incidents that happened throughout the company's history. Whether people knew the full truth or not, Fazbear Entertainment had a serious problem: its past. Imagine being a company whose name has become connected to some of the darkest humors imaginable. Even if you try to move on and open new restaurants, those stories don't simply disappear. And that's exactly what makes the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience so interesting. Because instead of completely ignoring these stories, Fazbear Entertainment decided to do something unexpected. They decided to turn them into a game. But according to Fazbear Entertainment, these events weren't supposed to be presented as real history. The company claimed that the stories surrounding its past had been exaggerated and turned into fictional games by an independent game developer. And now, with the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, Fazbear Entertainment had the opportunity to take control of those stories themselves. But why would they want to recreate the very events they wanted people to forget? Well, that's where things get interesting. This is where the story becomes even more interesting. According to the tapes we find throughout the game, Fazbear Entertainment had hired an independent developer to create games based on the stories and humors surrounding the company. The idea was simple. Take all these disturbing stories connected to Fazbear Entertainment and turn them into fictional entertainment. And this is important because the events of the previous games are, from the perspective of the people inside the FNAF universe, supposedly just that, games based on humors. Of course, we know there's a problem with that. Many of these events weren't simply fictional stories. The missing children were real, the murderers were real, the restaurants existed, and whatever really happened with the animatronics, there was clearly much more to these stories than Fazbear Entertainment wanted people to believe. So, why would the company want these events turned into games? Well, imagine hearing someone say that terrible things happened at a restaurant. Children disappeared, people were murdered, and strange stories began to spread about haunted animatronics. Then, years later, a video game appears based on those stories. Suddenly, those events can become something easier to dismiss. Maybe the stories were exaggerated, maybe someone made them up, maybe they were never real at all. And this is where I think Fazbear Entertainment's real goal becomes clear. Instead of simply trying to erase its past, the company may have been trying to control the way people remembered it. If these events could be presented as fictional stories, humors, and eventually video games, then the truth could become much easier to question. And the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience took this idea even further. Now, Fazbear Entertainment wasn't just allowing someone else to tell fictional stories about its past, they were creating the experience themselves. They could take the terrifying stories surrounding their history and package them as a virtual reality game. And that's the genius, or, depending on how you look at it, the incredibly suspicious part of their plan. They didn't need to convince everyone that nothing had ever happened. They only needed to make people wonder if any of it was actually true. But in their attempt to turn their past into entertainment, Fazbear Entertainment made a very serious mistake. But creating the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience wasn't as simple as making a few games about old humor. Fazbear Entertainment wanted the experience to feel authentic, and according to Tape Girl, the company sent the development team old circuit boards and other pieces of technology to scan into the game. The idea was to make the programming process easier by using existing data instead of having to recreate everything from scratch. At first, that probably sounded like a good idea. But something was wrong with the circuit boards. After the data was scanned, strange things began happening during development. A mysterious entity appeared inside the game, an entity we know now as Glitchtrap. And this is where Fazbear Entertainment's entire plan becomes almost ironic. They were trying to take control of their past. They were trying to turn terrifying events into fictional entertainment. But by using technology connected to that very past, they may have accidentally brought part of it back. The stories they wanted people to dismiss as fiction were now connected to something living inside their own game. And whoever, or whatever, Glitchtrap really is, it wasn't just another character. Glitchtrap could communicate with the player, it could influence them, and eventually it could even take control of them. So the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience was no longer just a game designed to make Fazbear Entertainment's history look fictional. Something inside the game was trying to escape. And that's what makes Fazbear Entertainment's mistake so incredible. They tried to bury their past by turning it into a game. Instead, they gave their past a way to come back. But there's one question we've avoided throughout this entire video. Who exactly are we playing as in Help Wanted? At first, it seems like we're simply playing as another person testing the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, an ordinary beta tester. But there are some clues that suggest there's much more going on. Throughout Help Wanted, Glitchtrap becomes increasingly interested in the player. We see him trying to communicate with us, manipulate us, and eventually influence our actions. And then, near the end of the game, something very strange happens. After completing the DLC, we're given the Vanny mask. At first, this might just seem like another creepy object. But when we look at what happens after Help Wanted, it becomes much more interesting. This is where FNAF AR Special Delivery comes into the story. In Special Delivery, we start receiving emails about a Fazbear Entertainment employee named Vanessa. And as we go through those emails, we begin to see signs that something is seriously wrong with her. She's communicating with someone, or something called Ness. There are also references to strange sources, suspicious behavior, and Vanessa seemingly being influenced by Glitchtrap. And eventually, the connection becomes much harder to ignore. Vanessa becomes Vanny. So naturally, one of the biggest theories is that the player character in Help Wanted is actually Vanessa. The idea is that Vanessa was recruited or assigned to work with the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, where she eventually came into contact with Glitchtrap. He then began manipulating her, eventually turning her into Vanny, and that would make the Vanny mask at the end of Help Wanted much more significant. It could be a sign that Glitchtrap has succeeded in influencing the player. However, there's still a problem. Help Wanted never directly tells us that the player is Vanessa. The game leaves the identity of the player deliberately unclear, and the connection between the Help Wanted protagonist and Vanessa became stronger throughout the events and evidence in through. The game leaves the identity of the player deliberately unclear, and the connection between the Help Wanted protagonist and Vanessa became stronger through the events and evidence introduced afterward. So while we can't say with absolute certainty that the player is Vanessa based on Help Wanted alone, the evidence from special delivery and the later games make the theory extremely convincing. And honestly, there's something fitting about that. Fazbear Entertainment created the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience to take control of the story surrounding its past. But instead of simply creating a harmless game, they introduced someone or something from that past into the experience. And the person experiencing it may have become one of its next victims, which leaves us with a pretty disturbing possibility. Fazbear Entertainment wanted to turn its past into fiction, but the past found a way to turn someone into part of the story. So, after looking at everything, I think the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience was about much more than simply making a VR game. Fazbear Entertainment had a history that it couldn't completely escape. Instead of openly admitting what happened, the company found a way to reshape that history and present it as nothing more than exaggerated stories and fictional games. And in a way, it worked. They could take the disappearances, the murders, the animatronics, and everything else surrounding their restaurants, put them inside a video game, and make people question whether any of it had really happened. But there's a huge irony to all of this. In trying to control their past, Fazbear Entertainment brought part of that past back into their own creation. By scanning all technology into the game, they may have given Glitchtrap a way into the virtual experience, and from there, the consequences continued, eventually leading to Vanessa and the creation of Fanny. So, perhaps the biggest mistake Fazbear Entertainment made wasn't creating a game about their past. It was believing that their past was something they could control. Because no matter how many times they tried to turn those events into fiction, something from that history kept coming back. And that's what makes Help Wanted so interesting to me. It's not just a game about surviving hunted animatronics. It's a story about a company trying to rewrite its own history and accidentally becoming part of that history all over again. And that was it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe, click the like button, share with your friends, and I hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video, everyone. Bye bye.